Alone in the alien market, Valari stood quietly at the edge of the alien market. Her arms ached from holding her smallest child, and her legs felt weak from hunger. 2 more children clung to her sides, their eyes tired and hollow. She tried to keep her head high, but her body was tired, too tired to hide the truth. Her stomach was empty. Her heart was heavy. The market was full of noise, shouting, haggling, bargaining. Many aliens came here every morning to find work, and others came to find cheap labor. But no one looked at Valari, not even once. Her skin was pale and dull now. Her robe, once bright, was old and torn. Her husband had died 2 cycles ago in a factory fire, and since then, everything had fallen apart. The alien laws were cruel. A widow with children was seen as a burden, not a worker. No one wanted her, no one trusted her. She stood in the same place for 5 days now. Every morning she came, and every evening she left with nothing. "Move out of the way," a tall reptilian worker hissed as he passed her. She stepped back quietly, clutching her baby tighter. Her middle child, Xeno, started coughing again. The dust in the market made his chest hurt worse, but she had no money for medicine. Across the market, a human man stood near a stall. He was silent, watching. His name was David, and he had come to this planet just 3 months ago. He ran a small repair shop on the edge of the city, fixing broken machines and old tech. He often came to the labor market to find help with cleaning parts or carrying supplies. But today, something else caught his eye. He saw her. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She just stood quietly with her children, hoping someone, anyone, would notice. David frowned. He had never seen someone look so tired, not just in the body but in the soul, like she had carried a mountain for too long. He asked the alien beside him, "Who is she?" "That one?" The alien laughed. "Valari, widow. Useless. 3 mouths to feed and no strength. You'd be better off hiring a rock." David didn't laugh. Back on Earth, his mother had once worked 3 jobs just to feed him and his little sister. He remembered how other people ignored her, how they crossed the street to avoid her dirty clothes. He remembered how cold the nights, or when the heat ran out. He remembered everything. Valari felt her knees weaken. Her youngest, Ruli, hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. She gave him her last piece of dried root. The other 2 just stayed quiet, too hungry to even ask. As the sun moved higher in the sky, the heat grew worse. The metal roof above the market offered little shade. A group of aliens pointed at her and laughed as they passed. One of them threw a small rock. It hit her shoulder. She didn't flinch. Her children, though, grew scared. Xeno hid behind her. The baby started crying. She tried to sing softly to him, a lullaby her husband used to hum. But her voice cracked. It had no strength. David kept watching. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he felt something in his chest, something deep and old. A voice that whispered, "Help her." But helping meant more work for him. More mouths to feed. More eyes watching. He looked at the shop owner beside him and asked, "Do you know if she's honest?" "She's desperate," the alien replied. "Sometimes desperate ones steal." David nodded slowly. "Or maybe they just need a chance." At that moment, Valari tried to walk away. She couldn't stand anymore. Her feet moved slowly, dragging against the dusty ground. One child stumbled and nearly fell. She bent down to pick her up and stayed there. She couldn't get up again. Her arms trembled. Her baby whimpered. Her face turned to the side, away from the crowd. She didn't want anyone to see her cry, but someone did. A shadow fell across her body. She felt a strange hand on her shoulder. "Wait," a deep, kind voice said. Valari turned her head slightly. A human. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever touched her gently in months. No one had spoken with care. She didn't understand. David looked into her eyes and said, "Let me help." Valari blinked. For the first time in many cycles, someone had finally seen her. David stood at the edge of the alien market, near a rusted vendor stall selling old engine coils. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched. He had been watching the widow for days. Every morning she arrived before sunrise. Every evening she left with nothing. She never begged. She never shouted. She just stood with her 3 children waiting, hoping. David's face stayed calm, but inside, something pulled at him like a sharp hook in the chest. The last time he had felt this was long ago, when his own mother had stood like that. Hungry. Ignored. Invisible. He remembered it clearly. Earth. Cold city streets. His mother wrapping old newspapers around their feet because they had no shoes. She didn't cry in front of them, but her shoulders shook every night when she thought they were sleeping. He had promised himself back then, if he ever made it out, if he ever had the chance, he wouldn't ignore people like that. Now, standing on this alien world, that promise whispered again. But it wasn't that simple. David had come to this world with only a few tools and a broken transport van. Over time, he built a small workshop. He fixed broken tech, cleaned out junk engines, and sometimes traded parts with off-worlders. It wasn't a rich life, but it was honest. Hiring someone like Valari would mean taking a risk. She was weak. She had 3 children. She was also an alien, and most aliens didn't trust humans much. Some even hated them. He watched as another group of aliens walked past her. One laughed cruelly. Another called her a ghost, saying she should disappear. She didn't respond. She just stared at the ground and held her baby tighter. "Why doesn't she go home?" David asked the vendor next to him. The old vendor, a wrinkled gray alien with a missing eye, snorted. "She has no home. Her mate died. No money, no clan, no support, just mouths to feed." "She never begs," David said softly. "Because she has pride," the vendor replied. "And pride is dangerous when you're starving." David kept his eyes on her. She tried to fix her baby's blanket, but the fabric was too thin, full of holes. One of the older kids sat down in the dirt and started drawing shapes with his finger. The younger girl coughed. None of them spoke. David felt his jaw tighten. He could walk away, pretend he didn't see anything, just like all the others. It was safer, cleaner, simpler. But then something happened. A dust cart drove past too fast. It kicked up clouds of filth and sand. The small girl inhaled it and began choking. The baby started wailing. Valari dropped to her knees, trying to cover all 3 children at once. Most aliens just turned away. David didn't. He took a step forward, then another. And then he was crossing the market, walking toward her. Valari saw his boots first, clean, strong, out of place here. Then she looked up, confused, scared. Humans were rare here. Some were kind. Some were not. She didn't know what to expect. She braced herself, thinking maybe he would yell. Maybe he would tell her to move. Instead, he knelt down beside her and opened a small satchel. Inside were a few soft protein bars, sealed and warm. "Take these," he said. Valari hesitated. Her pride screamed no, but her children's empty eyes said yes. She slowly took 1 bar and tore it in half for the older 2. David handed her another and smiled gently. "One for you too." She blinked fast, trying to hold back tears. "Why?" she asked in a quiet, dry voice. David sat down on a low crate beside her. "Because once, someone helped my mother. That's the only reason I'm alive." Valari didn't know what to say. No one had ever explained kindness to her like that. David glanced around. Other aliens were watching now. Some with confusion, others with anger. He didn't care. "What kind of work do you know?" he asked. "I clean," she whispered. "I can cook. I fix torn cloth. I worked in a metal house before." David nodded. "I run a workshop. It's small, but it needs cleaning, sorting, maybe some light help with tools." Valari looked at her children. "They come too," David added. I have a warm room in the back. Not much, but they'll be safe there. Valari stared at him. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then quietly she said, Thank you. For the first time in years, someone saw her not as a burden, but as a person, and in the silence between them, something began to change. The next morning, Valari came back to the market, but her steps were slower. She held her baby close to her chest. His breathing was weak. The other two children walked, behind her, heads down, their bones nearly showing through their thin skin. They had eaten last night thanks to the human, but it wasn't enough. Hunger didn't leave that quickly. Valari didn't know if the human would return. Maybe he was just being kind for one moment. Maybe he was gone now, like all the others, who once said kind things. Still, she waited. Because that's all she had left. Waiting. She stood in the same spot again. The other aliens didn't speak to her. Some gave her dirty looks. Others whispered and pointed. Why is she back?
She's still hoping for charity. She should take her spawn and disappear. Valari said nothing. Her arms were sore. Her legs felt like stone. Her mouth was dry, but she had no energy to look for water. As time passed, the market became
louder. Workers got hired. Transports came and went. But no one looked at her, not even once. The sun rose higher, burning above her like fire. The baby squirmed in her arms, crying softly, then went quiet again. That silence scared her more than the cries. She shifted her weight and tried to stand straighter. Suddenly, her middle child, Xeno, stumbled. He tripped over his own foot and fell hard on the ground. He didn't cry. He just lay there, too weak to get up. Xeno. Valari dropped to her knees beside him. The baby slipped from her arms and rolled gently onto the ground. Her hands trembled as she picked him back up. Her whole body shook. A few aliens glanced at her, then turned away. One merchant even laughed. She can't even hold her own children. Valari hugged Xeno and the baby close. Her oldest, Sari, came and knelt beside her silently, eyes wide with fear. All three of her children now sat in the dirt with her, broken, silent, forgotten. She felt something break inside her. Not like a bone. Not like a scream, just a quiet crack. She closed her eyes. Maybe this was the end. Maybe today she would lie down and never stand again. Then, a voice, a shadow, footsteps. Hey. She opened her eyes slowly. It was him. The human. David. He had come back. But this time he looked angry. His jacket was half open, his face slightly red from the sun. He had hurried here. I told you to come to my shop, he said, kneeling beside her. Valari couldn't answer. Her throat was tight. Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought you wouldn't mean it, she whispered. David looked at the children. Xeno's scraped knee, the baby's pale skin, Sari's frightened eyes. I never say what I don't mean, he replied. He gently helped her to her feet. Her body almost gave out, but he caught her. We're going now, he said. All of you. Some aliens started to stare. David didn't care. He put the baby in his arms, took Xeno's hand, gestured to Sari to follow. Valari could hardly believe, it not because someone helped her, but because someone returned. As they left the market, whispers followed them like smoke. A human? Helping her? What is he doing? He's crazy. But Valari didn't care anymore. Her legs moved like water. Her heart still ached. But for the first time in years, her soul felt a flicker of warmth. Hope, something she had forgotten the taste of, returned. Not as a gift, but as a hand offered freely by someone who simply cared. The sky turned orange. As David led Valari and her children away from the market, she walked like a ghost, barely standing, barely breathing. Her baby rested in David's arms now, wrapped in the human's coat. Xeno clung to her side and Sari walked behind them, watching everything with wide, careful eyes. They crossed the noisy street and turned into an older part of the city. The buildings were dusty and worn, but quiet. No shouting, no crowds, just the soft sound of footsteps and wind. Finally, David stopped outside a rusty metal door. He entered a code on a small panel. The door clicked and opened. Inside was nothing grand, just a workshop filled with old parts, machines, wires, tools, and a small cot in the back corner. But to Valari, it looked like a palace. David set the baby down gently on the cot and handed Valari a sealed pouch. Water. Drink slowly, he said. Valari hesitated. He nodded again. It's clean. I checked it myself. She took the pouch and sipped. The water touched her dry tongue, and tears filled her eyes. It felt like life itself. She passed it carefully to Leno, then Sari. Then David handed her something else, a soft, folded blanket. Valari stared at it. Warmth. She had forgotten what that even felt like. Why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. David knelt beside, the baby checking his pulse and forehead. Because it's cold out there, he replied, and you looked like you needed someone to care. Valari sat down slowly on the floor, the blanket in her lap. I can't pay you. I don't want money. Then what do you want? David stood, pulled out a small data pad, and showed her a picture of shelves covered in tangled wires and tools. My shop's a mess. I need someone to help clean it up, organize parts, keep track of inventory. I can't find anything anymore. She looked at him, unsure. It's work, he said. Honest work, not charity. She stared at the image. Her hands shook slightly, but she nodded. I can do that. David smiled. Good. Then let's start tomorrow. He walked to a storage cabinet and took out a small heater. He placed it near the cot and turned it on. A soft hum filled the air. Heat flowed gently into the room. Valari's baby stirred in the warmth. For the first time in days, his tiny face relaxed. Then David surprised her again. He took out 4 wrapped food packs and laid them in front of the children. Not fancy, he said, but enough to fill small bellies. Valari didn't move. At first, her hands hovered over the food. Her eyes welled up. Her lips trembled. Then she gave in. She helped her children eat. Slowly, carefully. She didn't eat much herself. Just a small bite. She wanted them full first. Afterward, the children lay close together on the cot under the blanket. Their eyes closed fast. Sleep took them like a silent wave. Valari sat nearby, watching them. Her body was still, but her mind ran wild. This wasn't a dream. She had food, she had shelter, she had work, and it all came from a human stranger. David worked quietly at a nearby bench fixing a broken drone. He didn't speak much. He just gave her space. After a while, he looked up. You'll start slow, he said. Just a few hours a day. I'll pay you with food and credits, enough to get you on your feet. I'll teach you how to fix small things too if you want. Valari swallowed hard. She hadn't cried in public since her husband died, but now, alone in a quiet workshop, with her children finally sleeping warm, she covered her mouth and let the tears fall. Not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. 3 days passed. Every morning, Valari arrived early at David's workshop. Her baby slept quietly in the warm corner. Sari and Leno helped sweep or sort small items. And Valari worked, quietly, quickly, carefully. She cleaned the shelves, organized dusty toolboxes, and fixed twisted cables with fingers that had once stitched clothes in her old life. Her back hurt, her arms ached, but she never stopped. David didn't speak much. He watched from across the room, letting her take her time. When she made a mistake, he corrected her gently. When she asked questions, he answered with patience. Valari had never known a man like this. Not on her world, not in the market, and definitely not after the war. By the end of the 3rd day, David handed her a small packet of credits and another bag of food. More than agreed, she said softly. You earned it, he replied. And more. She nodded. She didn't argue. Instead, she thanked him and returned to her children, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with quiet pride. But outside the shop, the city wasn't silent. The whispers had started. Have you heard? The human hired her. The widow, with the brats. He lets them live inside his shop. Maybe he's using her. Maybe she's tricking him. Every alien in that part of the city seemed to have something to say. Valari heard the whispers when she passed by the vendors. She felt the stares. Some turned away. Others glared openly. One even spat near her feet. But she didn't stop coming. Because now, her children were eating, sleeping, living, and nothing was more important than that. One evening, David was closing up the shop when a large alien approached. His skin was thick and dark green, and his horns curled back like twisted steel. His name was Brooke, and he was one of the old labor bosses in the city. You're making a mistake, Brooke growled. David looked up, wiping grease from his hands. Good evening to you too, Brooke snorted. You gave shelter to a broken widow. You think that makes you noble? No, David replied calmly. Just human. Brooke stepped closer, his voice low. You'll bring trouble to yourself. She doesn't belong. She's marked. Left behind. Cursed. David narrowed his eyes. She's a mother doing her best. That's not a curse, that's strength. Brooke stared for a moment, then shook his head. Don't say we didn't warn you. He turned and walked away, his heavy boots echoing down the street. Later that night, Valari sat by the small heater, rocking her baby. David handed her a soft cloth he found in an old locker. Might help keep him warmer, he said. She took it with a gentle nod. Thank you. Some people came by today, he added. They're not happy you're here. Valari stiffened. I'll leave if you want, she began. No, he interrupted. This is my shop. You're safe here. She looked at him, confused. But why? Why risk this? David leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. Because I've seen strong people crushed by cold hearts. Because I've watched children go hungry while others threw food away. And because someone once believed in me, when I had nothing. Valari lowered her eyes. I'm not used to people like you. Maybe it's time that changed. The next morning, someone had scratched a word onto the shop's front door. Traitor, David saw it. So did Valari. He didn't yell. He just got a rag and wiped it away. Valari stood silently beside him, her baby in her arms. You're not afraid? She asked. I've faced worse, he said, smiling slightly. For the first time, Valari smiled, too. Not a full smile, but a flicker, a spark, like something broken inside her had started to heal. And far away, in the shadows of the market, other widows, other mothers, watched and whispered something different. Maybe we're not alone anymore. The light inside David's shop was soft and golden. A week had passed since the market boss was arrested and removed. A week since Brooke's threat stopped echoing down the alleyways. A week since the word traitor had been scratched off. The front door, never to return. And in that week, something changed. Valari no longer walked with her head down. Her steps were still quiet, but now they had strength. Her children no longer clung to her in fear. They played, laughed, and even helped around the shop without shaking hands or hungry eyes. David had added a second heater in the back room, a new mattress, a stronger blanket, and a tiny hand-painted sign above the sleeping area that read, Crew Quarters, V Team. It was a joke, V for Valari, but it made Sari giggle every time. Valari folded wires and organized parts. She fixed a small drone by herself today, and David had clapped proudly. You're learning fast, he said. She looked away, smiling just a little. I had to learn fast. Life never waited. David nodded. But now, maybe it can slow down, a little. That night, Valari stepped outside the shop alone. The stars above the city blinked like quiet lanterns. The air was cool, Safe. Still. She closed her eyes and breathed. Not just air, but peace. For the first time in what felt like years, her mind wasn't racing. Her heart wasn't afraid. Her arms weren't holding children too weak to cry. They were safe. She was safe. Behind her, the shop door creaked open. David stepped out, holding 2 warm cups. "Thought you might want something," he said. Valari took the cup with a gentle hand. "What is it?" "Earth tea," he said. "Not much flavor, but it's good when you're tired." She sipped slowly, the warmth spreading through her chest. "Back on my planet," she said. "They would have laughed at the idea of a human saving someone like me." "And on my planet," David replied. "They would have laughed at me running a shop halfway across the galaxy." She chuckled softly. Then silence. Not heavy silence. Comfortable. David leaned against the wall beside her. "So, what now?" Valari looked at the stars. "I don't know," she said. "But for the first time, I want to find out." David smiled and nodded. "Then we'll find out together." She turned to him, this strange human who had given her food, shelter, kindness, and work, without asking for anything in return. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. So instead, she smiled, soft, real, honest. A true smile, something that hadn't touched her face in years. Inside the shop, the children were asleep. The heater hummed, the tools rested. And outside, under the stars, a widow who had once been invisible now stood with strength, not because she was rescued, but because someone believed she still had value.